everyone, this is Kelly and I have a thing in my face. We are actually early. I had the same problem with it just buffering and buffering and buffering, and this time it was not my internet because my internet was working fine. So I truthfully, oh, there's Tiffany. I was going to say, I don't see anybody at all, and I'm not entirely sure I'm even broadcasting. So I guess I will wait until Simon or Tiffany say hello because I don't know at this point. Okay, reclaiming life, hello, and so I'm fine. So yeah, I guess, I'm definitely going to need to replace my computer. I'm waiting for Black Friday to do so because I'm hoping to find a good deal. So, it could be more computer problems than what I thought was internet issues, but whatever, we shall persevere. It took me twice to get on this time. I'm going to turn the brightness down a little bit here. I feel like I'm glowing. I am very glowy white. But I feel like I'm extra glowy white. But I also do see that the sun is coming right in through the window. So I forgot about the time difference. I'm actually early. I had said yesterday, of course, not everybody obviously has watched yesterday's chat, but I said yesterday that I was going to have to be a little bit early today. So, so it is. So yeah, so I'm confusing things on top of it. I just didn't want to. We've had so many misses. I just didn't want to miss it. Tiffany's husband is building a beast of a computer. His name is going to be Casper. I do have a gaming computer, but it runs it's my TV. It runs everything for my TV and gaming and things like that. And I did build that. Well, I didn't physically build it, although I have physically built computers, but I picked all of the pieces for that and had it built a long time ago. Well, I think it was maybe the year Michael passed away, so 2013, which for a computer, 6 years maybe. Excuse me. I am also going to be really throat cleary today. Oh, you know what? I do have a cough drop, but it's like, okay, do I clear my throat or do I slurp on a cough drop? Anyways, I'm looking over it, and I named it Cylon because it's got a blue kind of thing right here when its front is facing, and it looks like a Cylon from Battlestar Galactica. I want this to clear, so maybe I won't keep having to do it. Depending on what features you need or want in a computer, you may want to look into Chromebooks. See, I definitely am looking for something reasonably priced, but I need it to run InDesign and I need it to run Photoshop well. And so I have the specs for that. I've kind of done my homework. So now I'm just hoping to find a reasonably priced one, even cheaper on Black Friday. That's my goal. That is my goal. I just picked these up in the mail, so I thought I would show them. I had done this Kickstarter a while back. This is a playing card deck, two decks to be exact. One is the same deck. One is Veiled, and one is Vibrant Edition. But look at those boxes. If you look at this back. If you're new to my channel, you know I have collected playing cards long before I was collecting tarot decks. I also do read with playing cards. So look at that back of that. This is the signed one that came with it. Oh my goodness, my throat. I think I originally got the Veiled Edition. Cough drops or syrup. I do generally use cinnamon and honey. Whiskey, I have definitely heard of. Ugh, honey and lemon juice, reclaiming life. I'm not sure. I am a big baby when it comes to gross things. I normally mix when I'm getting a cold. I'm actually getting over a cold. But when I'm getting over a cold or I'm in a cold, I tend to, do honey and cinnamon. I can't quite shake this. Yeah, I can't imagine the lemon juice. I would probably opt for the whiskey. Okay. Am I unfrozen now? Sorry, folks. This is going to be real good, right? We're having a winner chicken dinner here with, I just want to show a couple of these because they're so beautiful. You know, somebody else said that, Anna Teresa, who is Lady Bird Tarot. Somebody else did tell me about this 911. Is it worth it? Because it's a little bit pricey, but I did find it. But maybe it was you who told me about it. I don't know, but it looks delicious. Here's the Joker. Ooh, blackberry brandy. Look at that. And then look at, so there we have the spades. Of course, they're all, you know, I'm not going to show. Oh, I'm frozen again. Is anybody else seeing me as sticking, or is it just me seeing me as sticking? I would be interested to know that. It is, okay, other people are seeing me stick too. Okay, let me see. Is there anything else? I've closed everything. Let me close a couple more tabs. I have everything closed. Now, if you're seeing sticking, I'm seeing it too. Oh, I've already restarted, so I don't think restarting is going to help. Let me close all tabs here. It just has to make it till Black Friday. We're getting really close. It's a few more weeks. Excuse me. So I'm not going to go through all the minors, but look, they're little leaves. So here we have those. Let me get to the quartz. They're gorgeous, though. Look at the jack. Oh, look at the little mouse. But then who's going to swoop in and eat the mouse? Here we have the diamonds, which are these gorgeous fall leaves. Shaped that. They're all leaves, but they're shaped in different colors, obviously. Here's the jack. I mean, how gorgeous are these? Here's honeybees. Oh, look at that. Then the clubs are green leaves, obviously. And then the quartz, sorry, I'm trying to juggle these. Look at, there's the raven, the black stag, and the black wolf. Oh, look at that. And then lastly, the hearts. Look at those gorgeous leaves for the hearts. And then, whoops. Here is the fox for the Jack of Hearts. And I don't know what these are called. These are beautiful. I've seen these before. They look like leaves. And then frogs for the King of Hearts. And then I don't know if I showed you the gorgeous backs. So it came in two versions. To be honest, I don't know what the difference is. I was going to get the vibrant ones, which I did, but then at the last minute, apparently, I don't even remember this. I got the veiled ones. So let me see if the veiled ones are different. Oh no, it's sitting in something sticky. No. Okay. Are they different? No, they don't look any different to me. They look to be the same. Just one's on white cardstock and one's on tan cardstock. I would have thought that the veiled would be different colors. Huh. Oh, no, I don't know. I don't know. I just got them in the mail today. That's the only reason I'm sure. It's a different box. So yeah, I'm going to put these. Oh, I got this joker wet though. That is not, I don't use my jokers, but still. So these, if somebody asked what these are called, they are called, oh shoot, I put the wrong, the backs are different. So the backs have like two snakes and of the veiled, and the one that I really had wanted, which was the vibrant edition, are these backs. And those are the ones that I would probably use all the time. So yeah, there we have that, because I love playing cards. So these are called Fauna, F-A-U-N-A-E. And you know, we're supposed to be talking about animism, but I was waiting to see if it would stop sticking. I don't think we've sticked for a little sticked. I don't think we've had a sticky moment here for a little while. So I think we are safe to start talking about our topic, I think. Because I feel like, has anybody else seen me stick for a little? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Reclaiming Life. Says I am no longer lagging. Okay, so I am going to start, you know, we've been trying to have a focused topic. And again, the purpose, oh, and it came in a little bag. The purpose is of these focused topics are not that I'm teaching you anything about these things, but just that we're having a chit chat, what I think about the particular topic myself personally, and just having a chit chat about the topic. And then we roll into kind of our you know, anything we want to talk about mode after that. I was just talking about the deck because I was hoping to see whether we were going to get stuck, and I need to turn my light on because people say that he gets stressed out. Although it's quite light over there. I mean, if he was in a pond, he wouldn't have a light over his head. So I'm not entirely sure about that. Anyways, I digress. I digress. So I put the topic here as being animism. Animism is, I think, a word that we're often talking about when people talk about shamanism. So a lot of people will talk about decks that are shamanistic. And I think a lot of times we're talking about animistic style decks. I think animism is at the root of whereas a lot of people maybe wouldn't label themselves as being shamanistic or being in a shamanic spiritual path or something like that. They might consider themselves to be animistic. From what I understand, and I am not an expert, but from what I understand, the term animism is not a term necessarily that other cultures use for themselves, which I think is the case for shamanism as well. But it is a term that anthropologists have given to a way of seeing the world. So for example, we've talked about, I have a video out there about all of my shamanistic or animistic style decks. And I think that oftentimes we equate shamanism as something that is just to do with, say, indigenous American people, Native American tribes. We connect shamanism with just that, or perhaps just with South American, specific type of path, spiritual path. However, shamanism is a term that I believe, again, originally was an anthropological word to associate to this sort of primal, primitive, but not in the negative sense, but old base form of spiritual practice prior to what I would think of as like organized religions and things. So that was my precursor into I think we mislabel things as shamanistic, and a lot of times what we're talking about is animism. So shamanism, in my perspective, is more of a personal or a more of a practice, right? Such as I think of witchcraft as a craft, as a practice. Witchcraft to me is not a religion, it is a practice. So you can be, I know some people will have horrifying thoughts, but you can be a Christian witch. You can be a Buddhist who practices witchcraft. You can be a whatever you want to be. You can be a Wiccan and practice witchcraft, right? So not all Wiccans are witches, and Wicca isn't a term for witchcraft. Wicca is a religion, and witchcraft is a practice. So I think of shamanism similar to that. Shamanism or shamanistic practices are practices, and they incorporate certain practices that we see in these various cultures and various types of things where you see journeying work. You see a lot of very energetic work. You see a lot of visions and things of that type of things. So, for example, my sister-in-law is Mongolian. There are Mongolian shamans, right? So they have a shamanistic folk religious practice going on in Mongolia. You can certainly see it in places like Tibet. You can definitely see it in some Norse communities. So shaman is the term shaman incorporates a lot of different cultures, and it's more surrounding a particular practice. Again, this is all from my perspective. You can use the words how you want to use them, but I think that it helps when we're having a conversation that we're on board with how I'm defining particular words. So like witchcraft is a practice that other people can use, shamanism or shamanistic practices are ones that are used in a lot of different AKA religions or cultures or ethnicities. It's used that way. So you can have a Nordic or Norse shaman. I do believe you can have a Celtic shaman. You can have a Tibetan shaman. You can have a Mongolian shaman. You can have a indigenous Native American shaman. My guess is there's shamanistic things probably in Aboriginal cultures in Australia. I don't know. But my point is, it's a practice. It's a word that kind of defines similar practices. Now, animism is going, in my opinion, animism goes beneath, it's at a deeper level beneath something like shamanism or witchcraft or a particular religion or a particular cult. I think religion is probably a spiritual belief. It's a spiritual belief that's below religion. I'm doing very poorly here, but I think we're getting there, right? So if witchcraft and shamanism are practices that incorporate and go across a lot of different cultures and even religious beliefs, animism is sort of a core understanding of the world. Now, is animism part of shamanism? Yes, I would definitely argue. Is it part of a lot of other things? Yes, but animism goes deeper in that it is the way in which we see the world. Do we believe, do you, I know what I believe, but whether we believe that everything in the world is alive, that's a common idea in animism, that everything has a spirit, everything has aliveness, everything contains energy in some form or another. Everything is maybe there's spirits of, these are described in, and this is what is exciting to me about animism. Right, exactly, Pierre Truck. This is one of the reasons we would take care of nature. And I know I'm ignoring some of this over here, but I try to at least get the structure of what we're talking about and how I see it before I look too much at chat, because otherwise I get sidetracked. So animism can be that idea of as spiritual or in a way of thinking that says there are spirits of place. So you see this in a lot of different cultures. I'm most familiar with Celtic mythology, and probably after that maybe Norse mythologies and things and those tales, but that's certainly the Celtic folk tales, fairy tale realm is certainly my strongest suit. And so there would be the understanding understanding, but this it goes across many different cultures, the understanding that maybe you would find a spring, a little spring in the woods, and there would be a spirit of the spring, where there would be a spirit that was attached to that. And then later, as Christianity would come in, it would all of a sudden become more of a holy site, and maybe a fountain or something would be put up there. And so that understanding that that space has a spirit, morphed into, okay, there is a saint or something of that nature attached to this. Now it's a holy site, right? So it's the understanding. So we often see that where there is a spirit of a tree, like a dryad, or there's spirit of a rock, or there's spirit of a mountainside, or there's a spirit of, XYZ, right? So there is that understanding that there is a spirit or an energy or an aliveness in everything, everything that exists, not just human beings, right? I particularly like not the leap, because I don't think it's a leap, the connection that the Celia Conway, and I don't have the guidebook right with me because it's over with my guidebooks, but she has a deck called the Devas of Creation, working with the energies of the universe. And one of the things that I really like about this, and it's not a plug for the deck, it's more, this is a good deck to see where this creator has made that connection between DNA and spirit. And they're two different words, but they mean the same thing, right? So she connects in the guidebook and talks about the fact that everything has DNA or has genetic, has a strand of whatever. I'm not a scientist, but has something within them that tells it what it's going to be, right? So when a seed goes into the ground, that seed is encoded with the message, the spirit, the DNA, whatever that might be, to grow into a dandelion, my favorite flower. Please don't call it a weed. It's not a weed. It's a beautiful flower. So it is encoded with that, and it is going to grow into being a dandelion, because it's the spirit of it, the coding of it is, the energy of that is a dandelion. The seed of a little egg and a little sperm come together. They have encoded in it all of the information needed for the spirit of that person to become into a child, right? And so it's the language of animism, to me, doesn't negate science. It works hand in hand with science. It is just the it's language that's surrounding it. And in fact, I would say, and I think Reclaiming Life said something earlier, I again just missed it, being able to read it, and I'll have to scroll back. But science, in my opinion, it doesn't negate it, it supports it. This understanding everything, we know that everything has energy to it that holds all of the atoms and molecules together and keeps it being. It keeps it being what it is. Now, obviously, whether we give that spiritual meaning or not is up to the person at hand, right? That whether or not you consider that to be spiritual versus clear, hard science, and there's no, we're not talking about spiritual things here. We're talking about science. Well, we're talking, you, Mr. Scientist, are talking about the same thing. Our language just might be different, and the way that we approach it might be different. But it's what I've said in the past, that we, I think, struggle in a modern world of seeing our physical mundane life, the science, the facts over here, and we see our spiritual life and the way of seeing the world in a spiritual way as being over here, as if we walk these two different paths. But I don't believe that that's the case. I believe these are overlapping, right? Our spiritual, we have one path, we have one life that we are living and walking, and spirituality isn't something that's separate over here to science and fact. It's all the same thing. It's all the same path that we're on. I think we get in the most trouble when we're trying to separate those and live two separate paths. We're living one life, and our spiritual understanding of the world should inform our mundane life, and our mundane mundane life is part and parcel to our spiritual practice, right? It's all the same thing. We're living one thing. So whether a person approaches the belief in everything having life, everything being alive at some level, everything having energy and having spirit, is going to vary in how that translates, because depending on that person. That person might be a very rational human being who isn't really interested in thinking about spirit of place or anything like that, or pulling any oracle cards or tarot cards or anything, and so that they just stick with the science of it and that's their language. Or we could have a person who is more interested in going and sitting with the spirit of a place or the spirit of a rock, because we have a crystal sitting here, because to us it's more, we can tap into not just, oh, this is a pretty crystal, but there is an energy and a spirit and a life to what you're holding above and beyond just, oh, this is a pretty rock. That's the language that we're going to use, but I don't think it changes the reality. So I think it's just a difference of language. Now, obviously, I think that animism can certainly go farther than that, right? So animism can, or how you choose to run with whether you believe in animism or not. And I'll scroll back now and start to try to see what other people are saying here. Some people I think will go part way and then they don't go all the way. Like, yeah, I do believe that animals have a soul or animals have a spirit. They're not just biological forms that are running out, but they actually have a spirit to them. Say, okay, yeah, I can go with that. Look at what gorillas have, like what 99% of human beings' DNA. Or again, I am not a scientist or a biologist, so I'm just pulling that out of my hat. But I know, they have a very close understanding or close connection with human beings. So you're like, okay, I can kind of go there, right? I can go there with the animals, but a rock, like, is a rock gonna really a crystal? I don't know, these crystal people. I don't know about these crystal people, right? I don't know about rocks having energy or rocks having a spirit or anything like that. I don't know if I can go that far, right? So everybody probably has their threshold. There's obviously some people who would say that humans don't have spirit or soul. They, you're running out your biological thing that you're doing, and when you die, that's it. There's nothing else after death. It's just this life and this physical form, and when that's done, it's done. So there's certainly degrees in which you want to take it to a more spiritual place. But I do think lots of things hold energy. I love what Molly says here. I consider myself an animist. One reason I love old antique things, houses, furniture, is because it all has life energy to me. Same for plants, bodies of waters, statuary, and other things. Yeah, because then it really opens things up interestingly to things like, you take like old houses, or you take a rock that has been then, so let's say we have a rock that has its own spirit to it, and then that gets formed into a statue. Then that statue maybe gets handed down through generations and generations in a family, and generations of little hands, older hands, aged hands, put their hands on that statue, maybe pray to that statue, maybe talk to their ancestors, that statue, and it has this spirit that then infuses. There's a whole nother energy that can infuse that particular item, just like when you have a baby. You have a baby and it has its own energy to it, but certainly the way that we raise, the whole nature versus nurture, the way that we raise that child, the things that they pick up from society, religion, school, media, all those things have an impact on the energy and how that child comes out. Unfortunately, it's not, there's a lot of things that go into that. So you can see that you potentially could see that in old houses and old furniture and beautiful old guitars and all kinds of things, which is pretty cool. Reclaiming a synthesis of Jordan Peterson merged Joseph Campbell and a side of with a side of Carl Jung is the best neutral view of all things in the world. I do actually believe, if you watch my channel long enough, you know I'm a big fan of Joseph Campbell, and I do actually think he has a very neutral view of the world. Okay, I'm gonna scroll back a little bit. Hello to everybody I missed coming in. I know we're not at our normal time. So all of our normal people are not here. And they're going to come at about 4 o'clock and be like, what's happening? But, sometimes we have to roll with things. And we're just talking a little bit about animism and this idea of whether or not we believe that everything in the world has life, including rocks and streams and trees and plants and animals and things that are made out of those things as well, has an energy and a life of its own. And to me, and it's so funny because you read about animism, or you think about or you watch people discuss animism, and for me it's kind of like, well, duh. Like, it doesn't seem like it's even a topic, because it's just like, well, that's just the way it is. Like, why are we having a conversation about something that just is, right? But I do think that some people certainly look at animism as a form of belief in the way that they see the world working. And so I mean, the conversation is a good conversation to have, and not everybody's going to agree. But my argument would be is that however people want to frame it, whether we're going to frame it in the terms of science, or we're going to frame it, and again, I don't like to do the either or of that spirituality means that we cannot have a scientific mind, because I don't believe in that either or. But if you take the extreme end of science, I guess I would say, where everything is this, and this, and then you take the extreme end, I guess, of spirituality, where everything's over here and unicorns pooping rainbows and things, we take those extreme ends. I can see that conversation, but in reality, I think it's just a different description of the same thing. We're not really arguing, we're just using a different language to describe it. But anyways, I'm rambling as usual. This is the reason I made my deck a sacred space. All that I do is spirit. I think you mean desk. I'm guessing Anna Teresa means desk, maybe. All that I do is spiritual, even my mundane work. So elements and crystals are present. Yes, for sure. You see this a lot in Buddhism as well. So I'm pretty sure there's probably a solid running of animism in at least the Buddhism that I had studied for a long time. But this concept of everything that we do, and we're washing dishes, like the element of water is washing over the physicality of plates that we use to feed ourselves and to feed our family, and the act of creating a meal is just as important or as powerful as an act. We've talked about this before, this idea of mundane versus spirituality, but if the act of making a meal is no less spiritual or magical than creating a spell or doing a working, right? Because you are taking food and you're creating something to feed and nourish the people that you care about and the people that you love. That is an act of magic, and vice versa. It's all in how we approach what we're doing. Hello, Soren. I haven't seen you for a while. Live streamers should never feel constrained to a specific time, even if they have a general norm, unless it was scheduled in advance. Live streams and chat. I agree. I do try to keep it under some degree of control, though, both for myself, because I have, other things to do. I've already taught a whole class on runes this morning. So I tend to need to constrain myself so that I don't have to talk too much longer. But it does create sort of a what to expect. Okay, if you want to watch this back, you've got an hour here of chit chat about this topic, and then it's going to go a little bit all over the place for the second hour. And so people can kind of know, all right, I'm just going to tune into the first hour, or I like all the crazy stuff, I'm going to tune into the second. So it helps create some structure. Molly says animism to me is just the acknowledgement. I like that term, acknowledgement. It's just, yeah, I mean, it isn't us by us saying we believe in animism or we don't isn't going to change what is, right? So I like it. We're acknowledging that objects external to myself have energy and purpose outside of that which I give it because they are their own. Yes, we do as humans, don't we, tend to think that we kind of bestow energy and purpose in life onto something because of what it can do for us, right? So a plant that might be really good to help, like peppermint. I imbibe much peppermint, both in essential oil, aromatherapy, and burning and making in salts and things of that nature, and drinking in tea form because it helps my allergies. It helps all kinds of things about me, and magically it can produce help to use it, set intentions for abundance and things of that nature. But peppermint in and of itself, the peppermint plant has a life and an energy all of its own outside of whatever I might whatever I might get out of that plant. So I like that. I like that idea of acknowledging that there is a life and a value and an essence there outside of the perspective of what it does for us, which is good. That's a nice thing to think about, Miss Molly. Good golly, Miss Molly. Marissa said, as a kid, I was drawn to Pocahontas and how she opens. Yeah, can we sing The Colors of the Wind? Yes, we can, but then YouTube will mute us. How she opens someone else's eyes to how every rock and creature has a life and a spirit to them. Disney throwing animism out there for the children. Yeah. Unfortunately, Disney throws some things out we're not so thrilled about as well, as in most mothers being dead or other problems. But yes, it does open that perspective. It's a perspective, though, that I think that's an interesting thing to bring up, though, Marissa, because I believe that I just totally lost my train of thought. The bad parts of live stream is when you lose your when you lose your thought process there. I had a point I wanted to make, and I literally, let me go back and read this. Oh, yes, what I was going to say is one of the things that I find really fascinating is that I actually think that children know this already, right? I don't think it's something that has to be taught into people. And in fact, I think what happens is the opposite, that we often lose these understandings of the way the world works. We lose that because we are taught differently. We are kind of, oh, no, because my children, and I know myself, you just have an inherent understanding that of course everything is alive. Of course everything has a spirit. Of course I can go out here and talk to this pile of rocks over here, or I can go over here and feel sad because I've just cut a flower down, and why did I do that? And all of the things that children just naturally do and naturally understand, and then the world teaches us. Definitely a place for quotation marks. The world teaches us that, of course, no, flowers aren't alive. I mean, they're alive, but they're not really alive. They don't really have a spirit. Like, no, stop talking to rocks. Like, that's really weird for you to talk to a rock, that kind of thing. And we're taught out of a basic understanding of the way the world works. So I think that, children have that inherent knowledge, that inherent understanding, until all kinds of things come in there and interfere with that. I'm scrolling up, so if you're saying something lower down, I'm not seeing it at the moment. Scrolling back, reclaiming life. In popular culture, animism has had a much larger acceptance by people. Really? Thanks to KonMari and her incorporating her Shinto background into her tea. See, I have not watched a lot about KonMari. I have not watched a lot. What is her name? I can't even think. I haven't watched a lot of that. although I've seen her like thanking, I know that there's an aspect of that, of sort of thanking as you're going through everything, that it's okay to sort of acknowledge and thank the energy of whatever that was, but then also move it on. That's like as far as I can get with, I haven't watched a lot there, but I can certainly see it just in that. Okay. I am scrolling up. Shamanism is something I associate more strongly in certain areas of aspects of definitely Tibetan Buddhism, for sure. That's a good example of it. Okay, sorry, I'm just trying to. Lucy says the Finnish tarot mythological Feneka, I think, has the shaman as a hierophant. Yes, we'll see that in certain decks, which is nice to see. Tanya says, I see shamanism as one of the many lenses to view animism. That's a good way to put it. Lots of practices are underpinned by animism. I definitely agree with that. Claire also brought up Shintoism. I do not know a lot about Shintoism, so that's not something I can speak very much to. Tanya says, everything is connected at the deepest levels, a never-ending web, and physics is starting to come to this conclusion. Yes, I love the preface to The Way of Weird that talks about how science is now getting the vocabulary to talk about what has always been there, right? Okay, I think that is as far as I can scroll without losing track. Marissa said, yes, as a kid, I gave everything a spectrum of gender or voice, and i.e. spoons were feminine and forks and knives were masculine. I did that with special blanket stuffed animals. It just made sense. That's interesting, Marissa, because doesn't language also, not all languages, but I know that there are languages that, of course, that idea of gender and agency in some ways is built into the language itself, which is interesting. Agreed. Children are so inherently magical, in my opinion, and that it's programmed. It really is sad. Of course, and that's the thing, is I almost think that we feel the need to ground our children in reality, because we want, as parents, of course, we want them to grow into a fully functioning human being that understands, life and knows you've got to go to pay your bills and you've got to, take care of yourself and become like this functioning person in society. And I think that for some reason we have come to think that that means we have to strip out the magic, so to speak. And I use the term magic very loosely. We will have to have one of these discussions beyond magic, because I think that would be, that's just a term. There's a lot of terms that it can incorporate that. But I think that seeing the world as everything coming back to animism, where everything has a spirit outside of again, our what it can do for us, I think only helps somebody to function in the world in a balanced, healthy way. That you can keep the magic alive, you can keep the spirit of place and the spirit of items and things of that nature alive, and be healthy, functioning adults who pay their bills and probably have a much better connection with the world around them, and then hence would probably treat the world around them a lot better and that kind of thing. So I think that those things can be both. We can have both of those. We can have both of those things. We can create healthy, functioning adults who are paying their bills, but still keep that understanding of the world alive. So somehow, somewhere we've lost that, right? Veneration takes it. Reclaiming Life says, I don't know that it should be viewed simply as an acknowledgement, but more of a veneration, which is interesting, because that's definitely a term that takes it. It's not that we're just if I understand him correctly, or her. I'm sorry, I don't know. Them. If I understand them correctly, it's not just acknowledging, say, that the peppermint, we'll go back to the peppermint plant, that the plant itself has its own energy outside of me, But because of that, because I acknowledge, or as a matter of fact, acknowledge it not exist, right? Because it does have form and function and energy and spirit and life, that not only is it something that I need to acknowledge, but it is something, and I don't know, veneration to me almost sets above, where I feel like it's more that concept of namaste, or it is that more that concept of interwe in, if you think about in some forms of Buddhism, this idea that recognizing the sameness, recognizing that there isn't a difference energetically and spiritually, you're recognizing that sameness between you and that, whatever it is that you're looking at. Veneration is an interesting word, though, because it makes me think of ancestry, because sometimes ancestral, working with ancestors, and which we've talked about, we had to talk about before, but I know that sometimes that understanding of that is something that's tied up in animism, because if you understand the spirit of place and the spirit of these things, and you add in there that spirit lingers on, obviously, after a physical body is gone. So then that incorporation of ancestors into, you did say that. It's hard for me to remember reclaiming life. I have a hard time keeping everybody straight if it's a neutral tone and they're newer to the channel. I appreciate your patience. But, sometimes if you're doing some readings on animism, you will see that also, that connection of ancestor work and ancestral energy and things like that come into play as well. Of course, that can go along with spirit of place, especially back when you would certainly have more, or in certain cultures and places where spirit of place stayed much more static than it does now. Where you would very often perhaps be standing on the same ground that your ancestors, might have been standing on for many, many generations, where of course we don't see that as much in a modern context, at least in a Western modern context, where a lot of times people have moved multiple times throughout their lifetime, and that sort of family home or family space and location is less consistent than maybe it was at one time. But now we're kind of rambling off into another topic. Adults are judged when they start to use their imagination the way kids are. It becomes crazy, or like your heads are in the cloud. Yeah, I was always called a dreamer. Yeah, that's for sure. All of my report cards had, her head's in the clouds. She's a dreamer. She's a daydreamer. She doesn't see the world exactly the same as people see the world, comments to my parents, things like that. It's definitely, but at the same time, I think then you can at a certain point, roll over into being, oh, she's eccentric, or, like my boss was like, she's a sorceress. Which is my favorite thing ever, right? And then they just write you off as being eccentric, and you can go about your business and doing what you're doing. It's hard to raise children that honor their spirit and fit in social constructs. It is difficult. Yeah, I'm not saying that it's easy. I think the difficulty is not in the act of raising and the act of understanding it. I think the difficulty is that there is so much media and things around them that, push in another direction, that combat it. So I don't think it's so much that it's difficult. I think it's actually really easy to raise children that way, in terms of children just naturally are that way. My daughter was raised some degree religious, but so she would pray before meals and thank God for the meals. And I never told her, I would think I was probably a vegetarian at the time, but I never put those sort of ideas onto them specifically. And she would pray and thank God for her food. And then she would thank the animal if there was an animal involved. And she would thank the broccoli and the carrots. She would be thankful to the vegetables for giving us something to eat. And she would thank the animal itself. And that's not something that I specifically taught her. I mean, I have a respect for things around it. So, you know, that they can pick up on, but it was never like, okay, this is what you're going to do. And she naturally did that. So I think that children naturally fall into that. The problem is that, again, culture, media, all that stuff is pounding all around that kind of wear away at that sometimes, which makes it our job as a parent difficult. I'm scrolling back up. Adults are judged when they start to, oh, I said that. Yeah, it becomes crazy instead of being in my interest. It is a shame. I 100% agree. Isabel Louise. Come here. Tanya says, animism to me definitely incorporates respect for everything in the world. Yeah, I think respect is a great word as well. Just running through. Hello, Twist in the Leaf. Can't stay, but watch back later. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Tanya is quirky. Yeah, there are words. I definitely think that you can exist in the world outside of that construct, but you definitely get talked about. That's okay. Close to 40 years, I'm still a tree hugger. Yeah, that's me. I literally hug trees. I say that, you know, people say that, oh, they're tree huggers, they're tree huggers. I literally will hug trees. You just walk by them and you have to touch them. Yeah, contact with trees are very, very important. Tanya's okay with being quirky. Yeah, I'm okay with being a sorceress. That's my favorite thing. It's my favorite thing when your logical boss is like, you're a sorceress. I think you must be. So I'm like, sure. I cracked up laughing. I should have just said yes. Yes, I am a sorceress. So beware. Pay attention. Listen. Friends who are trees. You know, there is this horoscope based on trees. There's an old system. They often put oghams with trees, although that's kind of a newer thing that was put onto trees or onto oghams. They were lists of things, including trees with oghams, but you can definitely see that. My friends who are trees are much better listeners. That is the case. I spent most of my childhood up in a tree, and a specific tree laying in the branches. And I really believed and continue to believe that some of the stories that are shifted are passed through, you know, the rustling of leaves and the talking of leaves, and passed, and that energy passes all around. So I would just lay and listen to trees forever as a little girl. Again, I was a bit of a dreamer. That was the nice way, I guess. Now, when you're older, it becomes eccentric, but when you're a kid, you're a dreamer. So anyways, a friend of mine had a business card, office witch. She was the head of HR. See, people know. Last Mohicans where they thank the deer that they have hunted. Yes, I think that is something that we see incorporated. I'm sure not all Native American or indigenous tribes maybe have the same practices, but it's definitely something that you see in more, and going back into pre-organized religion, and that animistic aspect that wasn't even really thought about. It just simply was. So if it simply is, if you're not really thinking about it, of course you're going to think an animal that you're going to kill, that's going to provide your clothes, it's going to provide a roof over your head, it's going to provide bones for tools, it's going to provide food, right? So it's like, of course, it's almost that no-brainer aspect of, well, yeah, I mean, of course you're going to thank this buffalo or this deer or whatever that is, because people are super loud in the hall right now, and she's not thrilled. Come on. Come on. Oh, come here, Chunker. Come here, Chunker, baby. She is all out of sorts. Okay, I lost my train, but that's okay. We've kind of hit our first part section of talking about. So I know the next question, because obviously that's kind of what I do, is talk about decks as well. I think that decks that often are labeled as shamanistic generally have an animistic bent to them. So a lot of animal decks, plant decks, again, like Devas of Creation, the Illuminated Earth, I think is an amazing example of that. Those types of decks kind of tap into that understanding of everything is having this. Okay, are you done now? Can you get down? There we go. Can tap into that energy. So if that's something that you're interested in working with, looking for earthier based decks and things of that nature can really tap into that space. Again, I do have I don't remember what it's called, but I think it's called decks that are shamanistic or animistic style. That has, I think, a walkthrough of all the decks that I have that kind of tap into that energy, but they tend to be the more earthy based style decks, animal decks, plant decks, those type of decks can all tap into that understanding that there are lessons for us to learn from everything that's around us. And as other people have said, respect, veneration, acknowledgement, seeing, understanding that separateness as well as that connectedness can be pretty powerful there. So there's actually, I think, quite a lot out there. Some do it better than others, which I talked about in that video there. So in terms of decks, that's kind of where I would say, you could lean into if that's something that you want to work with more. When you go to forest, it gives you more positive energy than if you go into human. Pediatric. That's pretty cute. It depends on the human, but sure. Within both Islam and Judaism, in order for food to be halal, maybe is that pronounced, or kosher, any animal is killed or sacrificed to eat needs to be proclaimed to be thanked to God before being killed. Yes. Definitely getting kosher meat is something that I prefer simply because of that. But it's most closer attempt than, I'd say my something. It's not the same. Yeah, but yeah, I do agree with reclaiming life that there is a intention. I think that's what it would I loved that my daughter did both because that, depending on what your belief system is, I think the thinking of God or some divinity of some sort, is important part of a person's practice. But I like the extra step. But I think it definitely shows a more intention and acknowledgement of the life being given than the regular meat factories. So it's definitely a step in the right direction that I prefer if I can do so. Family thinks I'm eccentric. Christina's family thinks she's eccentric. Yes. All of the words that people just use to say, you're just a little left of center. You're a little bit strange. Generally, I think that's a good thing. People that are being not 100% normal in this world, I think, are generally probably closer to what we would like people to be. People are being so loud out there. Okay. I think that's what made my connection on my oh, gotcha. Yeah. No, I always thought that was the cutest thing. So I remember the first time she did it because, again, it wasn't something that I said, okay, let's sit down and say a prayer. And of course, she was raised from her father's perspective in a more religious setting. And from my perspective, she was raised in a much more Buddhist, probably a lot of her that she remembers would probably be more Buddhist, but definitely eclectic of a lot of different things and a respect for differences and things of that nature. So she took on her own part. So she got both of those things, but then she on her own part stuck them together, which was always cute to see what people pick up on. And again, I think kids just do it naturally, for sure. Okay, scrolling back in case I missed anything. But all in all, I think that I think he's talking about my daughter, Claire. I think he's talking about my daughter. Anyways, all in all, I think the concept and thinking about animism is something it's probably important, because I do think, as I said, in a lot of the things that talk about shamanism and things of that nature are sometimes mixing up the concepts of shamanism and animism. And so if you just think about animism as that understanding of the way the world works, shamanism is practicing within that understanding of the way the world works. Same thing with witchcraft or something of that nature. And then somewhere else you have more up the ladder where you're looking more into organized religions of different types. How closely it connects to the base concept of animism, maybe that's where the layering comes in, where I think things like shamanism and more earthy based practices are really close to that central understanding. Whereas the further away we get into organized religions, the further it's going into the way in which the world works, that as it affects human beings, then it's just way the world works. That's kind of my view of how that path to the way the world is and spiritual practices kind of going up there. It gets sometimes further away from just the way this is just the way the world functions, into that, okay, well, how does the world function as it relates to me as a human being? And then you get a whole bunch of human beings coming together with organized religion, and it starts to get scary. Any of the organized religions, not just one. But that's religion's a whole nother topic. I need to put that onto our list, because I do think that religion would be an interesting topic in and of itself, although a little bit dangerous, right? They say never discuss religion and politics. I think, isn't that the rule of thumb? Okay. I feel like I'm stuck again. I might be stuck. I'm not seeing anything shifted on the clock. Isn't moving. Shoot. I can't refresh this because we tried that, and refreshing it just ends it with this new way YouTube's doing it. I'm going to leave it for a second here. I don't see me frozen, but the clock is frozen. And the chat is frozen. Well, I say frozen. I mean, people could just not be saying anything, but I don't think so. That doesn't happen very often. And the clock wouldn't be frozen. I'm going to give it a minute. If you can hear me, I'm going to give it a second here because it cleared up before. So I'm going to drink my very poor drink that does not connect me with the natural world. Oh, there, I just scrolled a bunch. Tanya can see me. Okay, here we go. We are hearing and seeing you talk about how you think you may be stuck. I was stuck. The clock wasn't moving either. Nothing was moving. So my chat was, and all of a sudden it went bloop, and all of a sudden it moved. So yeah, it's just my end, which is good to know. I knew it was my end before, but I thought it was my internet, and my internet has been fine today. So I don't think it's my internet. I think it's just my computer. But it's okay. We can power through it for a little bit longer, and it will get itself sorted out. There's nothing else I can do to change. So I think if it freezes again, I'm just going to keep talking as if it's not frozen until somebody says you're frozen. I can't hear what you're saying. And then I will know. But that's okay. We're kind of done with the animism talk, or maybe we can continue to talk about it. But we can, now we're kind of going on to free for all time. So whatever you want to talk about, throw it in there. Well, I mean, fun things, because we're not going to get into a secondary deep conversation. Monica says, what advice would you give someone who wants to start a tarot/reading channel? Any tips? My tips, obviously, this is a question I do get asked a lot about, like tips for creating channels of any kind. And my tip for that is to do what you're passionate about. I've said this a lot of times because it's true. I will find myself watching channels that have, I would say, going into it, aren't really about anything that I'm all that interested in, just because the person is really passionate about what they're talking about. Like if they're really passionate about overhauling this particular engine, sometimes I get caught into watching an entire YouTube video about a changing or fixing a particular car engine, or some kind of old car engine or something that I have no interest in, but the person is so enthusiastic about what it is and really clearly passionate about what they're talking about that I will watch them, because it's just wonderful to see people who are excited about what they're talking about. So I would say figure out what it is. Like if you want to do it surrounding, you're not late, I'm early, Miss Nikki, you're fine. If you know that you wanted around tarot or something of that nature, figure out the way to tap into your own enthusiasm, your own what it is that you're excited about, what it is that interests you, and have those conversations surrounding the things that interest you, because that is always so fascinating, or is always far more interesting to watch than somebody that maybe is perfectly scripted and perfectly, this is my thing, and I'm going to talk about this, and here's this, and we're going to talk this and that, and everything might be perfectly put together with perfect lighting and perfect sound, and all of this stuff can still be absolutely boring to watch because there's just no spark there. There's no enthusiasm. There's nothing there that can really draw you in. So I would just make sure that you make a channel based on, and it doesn't have to, like, tarot is a broad topic, right? Some people, like me, I absolutely love going through decks. I started my channel to walk through decks because I believe that every person's iteration of the images of tarot or oracle or Lenormand or whatever that might be, every iteration of that says something, right? It's one, even if I don't particularly like the experience, it's still somebody's experience of tarot, and there's some little layer that gets swiped on to my understanding of the card. So it was what I loved to watch when I started my channel. And so it is what I started the channel based off of, because it was something I really love. I enjoy it. They are not short, but they are very usually enthusiastic because I actually enjoy the process. I enjoy teaching. So that's something that I like to add in there because I enjoy to teach things. It's something that is part of who I am, and I enjoy it. Whereas maybe you don't like to do deck reviews, but you want to talk about maybe each individual card, or you might want to talk about your journey, or maybe have us walk along with your journey as you learn something. There's a lot of different areas, right, in the scope of divination or in the scope of whatever it is. So figure out for yourself what it is that makes you really excited and do that. So if everybody does deck reviews, but you really don't like to do deck reviews, but you think, oh, I just have to do them, don't do them because you have to do them. Figure out what's exciting to you and do that. So that was a rambly way. That's just a rambly way of saying figure out what you're enthusiastic about and put that into your video more so than everything being perfect or it being the right kind of content for a tarot or a reading channel. I'm honestly not a fan of deck reviews since I automatically know which decks I connect with and don't care. Yeah, See, so then that's not for him, right? So, and that's you can say the same thing, I think, in reverse about what channels to watch. Like, not everybody, in fact, clearly, I mean, not everybody is going to like the same kind of videos, and that is not a something bad about the person. I watch deck reviews of decks that I will never buy simply because I enjoy seeing the cards. I enjoy seeing some people's reactions and what they think about it and what thoughts come to mind. I enjoy it. I just always have, and I probably always will. If somebody else could say that is, especially my videos, right? It's like hour on a deck. A lot of people are like, no, like that is not something that I want to spend of my hour and my time. That's fantastic. That is the joy of YouTube, right? As both the watchers and the creators, find the things that you're passionate about and watch those things. And life will go a lot better. Time is short. Do what we love, right? Do what we're enthusiastic about. I know, Patrick, I know. But that's the thing. You know, we laugh about that. Patrick just said, there's this truth and story person who I can't stand watching. That's the thing, though, is that we actually do see people that seem to make, they watch really long videos that they hate and that drive them insane, and then write, you know, long comments about how much they dislike and hate. It's like, don't waste your time. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your time on something that you don't, and you don't even have to write about why you don't. Just don't watch it. Just hit the stop button. Literally, if you're starting to watch somebody and you're like, oh, I cannot do this, stop. Go watch something else. I never feel the need to say, rah, 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 I don't want to watch your video because XYZ. I just don't watch the video. Go find something else. So both in the consuming of YouTube and the creating of YouTube, you know, go with what brings you passion, what excites you, and what doesn't. Leave for somebody else that it does, because we're all different human beings. Which is, again, a rabbit trail. I completely respect people who can take the time to spend 20 minutes to do it on connect with each, or an hour for me. Yeah, and then you can speed them up. Yeah, that's the other thing. Skip to where you want. Somebody's like, you know, rambled off on something, skip ahead. Somebody, I think Patrick, actually, my friend Patrick, he's like, I think he was watching, one of my classes back or something. I think it was my rune class he was trying to consume quickly. And I think he put it on, I don't know, maybe he's still on, and he'll say, I don't know if it's two times fast, but anyways, you can speed the videos up. Now, I think it takes a little bit of getting used to maybe the sped up voice, but you can speed it up and or skip to parts that are interesting to you. The irony of people taking the time to watch long videos. I know, writing out a complaint. I know. It's like, just don't watch it. It's okay. It does not hurt anybody's feelings. I don't think it should hurt anybody's feelings because somebody doesn't want to watch your video on whatever it might be, right? And truthfully, and I know that people say that all the time, like, don't make something because of somebody else watching you. And that's, you know, I think there's a lot to unpack there, because I do think, obviously, if you're taking the time to make a video and you're putting it up onto YouTube, you're obviously always have the viewer in mind to some degree, or else why else would you be putting it up? So I think that's a little disingenuous to say that we don't put videos out for other people to watch, right? That's great if they do, but I do it for myself. That's a little bit disingenuous, but at the same time, I think there's a nugget of truth in that. If you're making something that you're not enjoying yourself making it, that you're not enthusiastic about it, that it's not just something that you want to talk about for XYZ, whatever length of time that is, that translates, right? That translates into how that comes across to other people, no matter how interesting the topic might be. If it's clear that you're making something just because somebody else might really like this, but you're not interested, I think that's going to show, and that's going to impact things. But yeah, that's good question there. I don't know that that was a helpful answer. I don't even remember. I'm so bad with that. Whoever asked that question, I'm not sure if that's helpful because there's not a formula. I can't say, you know, by this particular, I don't know how you still watch my videos, Claire. Claire gets driven insane when a content creator talks about everything else for the first 3 minutes instead of talking about the posted topic. Yeah, I'm sure I do that all the time. But Claire puts up with me. Claire puts up with me anyways. Okay. Anyways, what I was saying is for the person who asked the question, I know that that seems like a really pat answer to say, do what you're excited about. But the truth is that nobody can say, buy this camera, buy this microphone, put up this particular content. And that's the best way to start a YouTube channel. Because in the end, if you don't find your space and your voice, it's not going to matter about the camera or the microphone or anything like that. Shared resonance. I like that, Patrick says. I so appreciate shared resonance, but don't create for it. I think that's good. I know from the teacher mentor on memory techniques, Anthony Medavere, I'm sure I'm slaughtering that, suggests only watching at one time. But I personally watch it 2 to 3 times the first time, then rewatch. That's a good way to do it. Or even maybe a portion of it. You could even maybe say, okay, I'm going to watch the first 10 minutes quickly just to see if I'm really meshing with this. And then if I am, I'll slow it down and listen closer. I always watch things at one time, but I have had, like I said, Patrick did say that he watched that he did listen to my classes, because my classes tend to be very long, even longer than these things. And so in order to get them he had no problem once he got used to it with the 2 times. So that's something that you can do as well. So I don't personally do it, but I know that people have suggested it. Al says, I think authenticity is lost when content is overscripted, then it becomes meh. Yeah, it's hard though, right? Because I can definitely understand that rambling can be annoying to certain people. This is why you just can't make you can't make for necessarily for the people that are viewing. If I script something up too much, which I don't make scripts, I don't even make outlines. It's not going to be me, because that's just not who I am. And so that's okay. Other people because I can totally understand that you can make a video. So let's say I make an hour video on animism, which I didn't do. We just had a conversation. But if I did make a video, if I made a video for an hour on animism in my style, could I take that and script it and organize it and outline it down to, say, 30 minutes and still say the same thing? Yes, I'm sure that is the case, right? If that's all kind of organized correctly and everything set up just right, I can definitely get that in a shorter aspect. And for some people, that would be the best way for it to be. So then other people actually enjoy to watch because it is rambly, because it is just kind of having that conversation. So the fact of the matter is that it's just personal preference of what style of a person that you want to listen to, that you're going to put that time into listening. And you can't, if you're not doing you, then at some point that's just not going to work, because it's just not going to translate. So just, do who you are, be who you are, again, do what you're excited about, talk about things that do bring you or you're interested in, and that's what's going to translate over anything else. And then the people who can't deal with the rambly, which I don't think is saying anything bad about somebody, because sometimes we have X amount of time, so I need you to get to the point, and that is fair. Then there's other channels that can do that, and vice versa. So it's interesting. What works and doesn't work is so interesting. Isabel's dreaming of everybody being too loud. She's like irritated with the Susanna says, I don't understand because I'm Spanish and I buy decks because of your wife. I still impact her and she speaks Spanish. Oh, thank you, sweetie. I appreciate that. Rambling can be annoying to some people. A friend hates podcasts for that reason. But if I can find podcasts on a research topic, the rambling is an absolute gold mine to me, especially with good show notes. Yeah, a couple years ago, I really, a podcast is something I think that would be a very good format for me. Possibly better, to be honest, than video. And so it's one of those things I tried to, I was reading, I think I started with reading stories. But it just, I think the hosting was the problem at the time. Hosting was really expensive and it didn't quite feel like it was good use of my money capital at the time. I need to relook into it because I do think it's probably even a better format for me, to be honest. I'm weirdly the opposite in that I find short videos can seem like a waste of time and creators are rushing to just to get the fuck out of there. Yes. I think that I find the same thing, Molly, and not so much that they're rushing, but it does seem very condensed and it's just the main points. And I kind of like the juicy bits in between. I think that sometimes when there's a little bit more time, obviously, to talk about it, it just gets expanded a little bit more. And you kind of can dive into little pockets and stuff like that. Whereas if it is really concise and scripted, you tend to get just here's the bullet points and you don't get below that. Al just got the notice from YouTube. Yeah, you cannot, unfortunately, you can't rely on YouTube for notifications. I love to listen to podcasts. So does my daughter. She's a big podcast person. I haven't in a long time as much as I need to kind of go back through. I feel like I tend to use YouTube as podcasts. Like I don't tend to watch a lot of things. I tend to listen to a lot. So it tends to go on, kind of function for me similarly to a podcast. I definitely have found that shared resonance, like physical success, is best when it is an outcome to simply being true to yourself. I think we can try too hard to be liked and it fall flat. Yep. Yeah, I don't think there's any way to script, how you're going to go over. And I think also just having to give up on the idea that everybody's going to like you. Like that's just not reality. And I don't think it necessarily has to be about like I like you or I hate you. But I mean, I don't think that resonance is always going to be there. And I think that that's natural, right? I think that it's natural that we not resonate with every single person on the planet or we would never get anything done. So I think it's not only not going to happen, it's natural. It's a natural thing that we resonate with people's particular style. Sometimes it's their voice. Like I've definitely, you can get lots of comments like, I just cannot listen to your voice any longer, right? So for that person, like that's a no-go. If you can't listen to my voice, you definitely can't listen to my voice for an hour, right? So that is just finding what works. There is no when, L. It's just whenever you pop in whatever you want to type into the book group. There's not a specific time for it. It's just game on. Put in what you think about it. Start chit chatting. We were talking about I missed something on the fairy tale. Will it start raining? It either started raining or I'm going to have mice problems. If we resonated with everyone, then there would be absolutely no new growth in the world. And this is definitely true. We need that. I keep saying that I'm going to find the article or the essay. I want to say that it is by Thomas Paine, and I could have that name incorrect. Anyways, he wrote an essay. I don't know when he wrote the essay. I'm pulling something out of the recesses of my mind, but it comes up a lot and I have to look the essay up again. But anyways, in I think it's the essay may be called On Liberty. I could be wrong. But anyways, he writes that one of the things that really stuck in my head about that was that part of what he talks about is that we really shouldn't, resonance isn't just about liking somebody or something like that, that we should surround ourselves with people that not only think the way we do, but also think differently than we do, and that maybe even disagree with us or disagree with what we think. That's not a bad thing, right? We need that push, that energetic push and pull and things of that nature to have growth, to create growth, to be different. Like we don't want the whole world to be homogenous. That would be, I think that the world would flatline if we were. Now, do we need extremists? I would argue we do not need extremists. But I do think that that we don't have to be on the same wavelength with everybody, and that it's important that we have all of those different viewpoints as long as we can maintain some respect in the middle. anyways, Kelly, this is how I heard your voice, Molly. Oh, Kelly, the Divine Muses Dex comes in a mini edition. This I did not know. Like, is it playing card size, Molly? Is it Thomas Paine? He wrote My Space in 17 times on Liberty was one of them. Most popular. So I'll have to look it up. I feel like it was his On Liberty that he talks about having people around you that you don't agree with. It just only being around people that agree with you might be problematic. But I could be wrong. I feel like 90% sure it was On Liberty, but I could be wrong. I'll have to reread it, but I appreciate that. At least I connected the right name and the thing, so I'll have to reread it and see if that's what it is, or if I'm completely, made a misconnection somewhere. Everyone would have heart attacks and die if the world were perfect. There have been books about that, and I cannot possibly think of one, but I know there have been books about, think about The Matrix. Think about the movie The Matrix, where they talked about how, because technically, right, the Matrix was our imperfect world that we're living in, that we thought this was our life, but it's really not. We're in the Matrix, right? And they talk about how they tried it. They tried to make this perfect version of heaven for everybody to live in, so they could suck their batteries and drain the life out of them. That they tried to do it first with this perfect world, and they had to shut it down because it didn't work. People really didn't know how to function in an absolutely perfect world. That was one thing that came to mind with that, Soren. And then I believe there is a book out about, like when you think about utopias versus dystopian type thing, this idea that something that is a pure utopia isn't necessarily going to work. I think you see it in The Time Traveler, the book. Well, there's movies as well, but the book, The Time Traveler, I think you see that too when he goes into the future, and it seems like this absolutely perfect world, but that can't function. Anyways, we're rabbit trailing. Interesting rabbit trail, though. I like this. It wouldn't work because we would be living in an echo chamber where nothing stretched our views are pushed us beyond our limits of comfort. I have to say, I have a friend who is very challenging to, doesn't let me be lazy with conversation and my thought processes on all kinds of things, and can in some ways be discordant in those conversations. But in the end, it forces me to do two things. It forces me to really think about what it is that I'm thinking or believing, so that I might end up saying, yeah, I really do hold with that. So it may not change the way I think, but it forces me to think it through and evaluate and reevaluate, and then maybe come up with a saying that, yeah, I do actually, this is what I do believe. or sometimes it forces me to, again, reevaluate, think, be able to communicate what I'm saying well, and then maybe stretches me to shift and change as well. So it functions in two ways for me personally, in that it causes me to really understand what I believe and be able to communicate it well. It doesn't change my mind, but at least I'm stretched in the capacity of understanding, really knowing what I think and believe. And then sometimes it pushes me beyond. All I can think about when people talk about like-minded people gathering together is drinking the Kool-Aid scenario. Oh no, that's never a good thing. Never a good. Isn't that hilarious though? That I think it's sad. I mean, it's horribly sad. But now, like, drinking the Kool-Aid is a frame. It's a frame of reference for people, which is really disturbing and not in a good way, right? What kept me from ever making YouTube is judgment or unsolicited opinion. Yeah, don't make it. Do not make a YouTube channel if you do not want unsolicited opinions or insults, for sure. But I don't have one thing I know so much about. I can make content that feels like it would contribute to the greater good or something like. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that. Thank you. We need to do our week card for the week, don't we? I don't necessarily think that I believe that every YouTube channel has to help the greater good. I mean, I definitely watch some. I definitely watch some YouTube channels that aren't really increasing the greater good, but I still find them to be interesting. But I mean, I understand the point. So you do feel like, okay, if I'm going to waste my time, right? If I'm going to take the time to make it, to edit it, to upload it, all of that kind of thing, you do want it to obviously have some degree of an impact or something to say. I do get that. I do understand that. But lots of squirrels. I'm a squirrel. I'm definitely a squirrel person. So you can make that work for you. Oh, Nikki put a link to the Divine Muses. I think that Molly did say no, because we jump around. This is live chat, and that's the other thing. Live chat is a kind of, especially the second part, goes all over the place. I think it's playing card size. The book is, I think Molly already left. I'll message Molly separate. The book to me and that is kind of a necessity. It's a fantastic, the book is really, I think, part of the power part of that one. And I don't say that a lot because I don't tend to use guidebooks a lot. But that one, whoa. Let's just throw the cards around. Well, yeah, see, that's the thing, Nikki. It's like, what is your goal? And maybe that's another thing to say for people who are thinking about making a channel is thinking about what it is that you're excited about, where your passions are, but also really have maybe stop and think a little bit about what is it you're trying to achieve, right? What are you trying to achieve in doing this? If your goal is to achieve what Nikki just said, just, somebody to chat and hang out, and for just that moment in that video to feel less alone, that is a worthy conversation, in my opinion, right? I think that it's it's being clear about what you're trying to achieve. So then if you achieve that, then you've already won the game, whether or not it's successful, whatever that might look like to you, whether or not, all the other components, disregard all the other components, because if a few people have an opportunity to come together and have a chat in the middle of the day and get through the day, maybe have a smile on their face for that day or for that hour or 2 hours, That's a big goal, and you can check that off the list. And no matter what are the comments that you get and things, then it all becomes irrelevant. So I think that figuring out like what is your actual goal for it can go a long way towards not being disappointed with however it works out. Nikki says the person with sparkle in her name. I won't change my name to Nikki, the Amethyst Oracle Guru Priestess Sparkle. Nikki, you're hilarious. You really sparkle. Tibetan Buddhism is heavily covered by historic bodily. Things are going into end up I'm always careful when I see like a detailed conversation going on in the chat, because if I haven't seen it all, I really can't. I don't like to insert myself in the conversation because I probably missed part of it. Only when I feel good though, so better sparkle my soul shine. I like that. Oh. We're buffering and we're back. See, I just decided to keep going through it. I'm pushing through any buffering because apparently there's nothing I can really do about it. So, so it wasn't just Soren. I'm just going to keep pushing through because we've made it an hour and a half and I can't really change anything about it at the moment. So we're just going to keep pushing through. I think I shuffled this enough. Oh, so some people aren't getting the buffering. I didn't see that particular buffering. So, I mean, I think it's probably a combination of my end sometimes. Sometimes other people's internet is also acting out. So it's always, as in all things, it's usually a combination of factors that are at play, right? All right, let's see. Ooh, we got the Seven of Swords. So the Seven of Swords, and it has I'm sorry. I'm being a very poor weekly poll card. So if you've not been on our live chats on Saturdays, we have been for some time pulling a card for the week from the Art of Life Tarot. And this is a deck by Charlene Livingston. And it is a deck that combines art, pre-existing art that is like from in museums and things, classic art, I guess is what you would say. It's combining those with quotes. I am a huge fan of quotes. I've always collected them and loved quotes. And of course, who doesn't love art? I feel like everybody should love art. So the art piece here is Road with Cypresses by Vincent van Gogh from 1890. And the quote is by Nietzsche and says, "One must have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star," right? Stars are not born out of comfortability. It kind of goes with what Reclaiming Life was saying, is that we need the chaos and some degrees of differing mindsets and dissonance as well as resonance, right? That we need both of those things because that is how a star is born. So yeah, apparently if it holds true, Al says she should be about to supernova. You're just, don't stress over it, Al. It's okay. You're just giving birth to a star. That's all. Don't worry about it. Why are you stressing over all this chaos? It's a star being born. No, I do love this quote. So backing up a little bit. So the Seven of Swords is one of those cards that, I just made myself look even like a crazier person. Growing out the pixie. A Star is Born from Judy Garland. Yeah, can we just talk about that for a second? Flamboyant, clairvoyant. That's the best one. I do like the new Star is Born. I did enjoy it. But in my opinion, I've seen them all. My opinion, the Judy Garland one is the absolutely the best, but I'm definitely a little bit biased about that. Okay, going back here. So the Seven of Swords is a card. I don't tend to read directly Rider-Waite-Smith. So the Seven of Swords for me is about what's going on beneath the surface, that what's at the foundation of things is important. If we think about the number 7, which is 4 plus 3, right? So the number 4 is a number of stability, and then building on top of that comes the growth of the 3. And so the Seven of Swords is about growth, but it's more about what's underneath the surface than not. It's often known as the thief card in tarot, where you kind of have this hand that's coming out and grabbing the swords, or there's somebody climbing out of a window with a bunch of swords, and you're kind of like, what is that guy up to? Like, I don't understand the situation. Is he stealing the swords? Is he a spy soldier who's going in to grab a particular pile of swords so that they can even the odds of the battle that's going to take place tomorrow? We don't know exactly what's going on. And so there's more going on beneath the surface than we realize. And so that does go with this quote, because there's an understanding that we're seeing chaos. We're seeing a little bit of craziness. There's a little bit of unsettledness, dissonance, those types of energies going on. But beneath the surface, a star is being born, right? So there's more going on. It might feel chaotic. It might be unsettling. Growth is often unsettling. But underneath it all, there's a star being born. So your homework for this week is to watch A Star is Born with Judy Garland. Not by Judy Garland, but with Judy Garland. And when things get a little bit crazy and a little bit hectic, just think about what might be going on beneath the surface a little bit. Now, it's not always going to be so wonderful as a star being born, but there's probably more beneath the eye than you realize. So there we go. That is our card for the week. For I have no clue. Elsa, how do you pronounce Mjornir? I have absolutely no idea. I'm sure she wasn't asking me, but I have no clue. I've seen the Judy Garland story, but we'll watch it again for this week. I will rewatch it for this week. There's that lost holdover from the Seven of Spades. Yeah, I know. The problem with Rider-Waite-Smith, I'm not going to harp it because you guys know how I feel about it. The problem with the Rider-Waite-Smith often is that they kept some of the playing card divination meanings, but they didn't keep them all. And so playing card divination is very balanced because you have very 50-50 in terms of the energies of the cards being whether it's positive or negative. But if you don't pull over the whole system and you just pull some of it, it doesn't work so well. Anyways, we can always talk about Judy. I agree. That could be a name of a show too. We can always talk about Judy. Hi, Michael. Michael says hi from Germany. Hello from the United States. I'm just scrolling back to make sure I didn't forget anything. I had a bumpy start to October, so sure she does not want a bumpy. She doesn't want Sherry. I don't know if you're, yeah, she's still on. Sherry's like, I do not want the roiling of the seven. I don't care what's beneath the surface. I do not want the chaos, which is fair, right? That's fair. We're gonna be like, look, I don't care if there's a star being born here. I don't want the chaos right now. I will go for the. Are we leaving? No, we're not leaving yet. Oh yeah, we are almost leaving. It's almost 5. Yeah, we got here early. That was my fault. But again, I preferred to get here early than to miss it and skip it entirely. But I'm definitely ready to stop talking, which sounds terrible, but I don't know how long our class was this morning. I had my last rune class. I'll answer that in a second. But it was at least 2.5 hours, probably 3 hours. So I talked for 3 hours, then I had like 45 minutes, and then it started all over again. So I'm kind of like that. Okay, I'm probably done talking for a little bit. I love Jackson Crawford in terms of how to pronounce it. Al says, do you ever pull another card when you're like, no, not that one? No, it doesn't work out well. It never works out well. I always talk about, or this year I've talked about, because so in December, I tend to pull a year ahead for months with tarot. And then I also pull a rune of the month and the year. And so when I pulled my rune of the year, it was nowadays, which is about need. But it's not just about need. It's about need, but there is an opportunity for healing in it. And but my story is that I've dealt a lot with that rune in the past, and then there's a lot of grief work and things of that nature. And so when I pulled it, I was like, no, like, because December's a bad month. It's the month my son died in, so it's always a rough month. And so it was in December when I was doing this, and so I was just like, I really was just like, I just don't want this rune for the year. Like, I don't want it. So I put it back in the pile, and I shook it all up, and I mixed it, and I pulled it back out, and it was nowadays again. So I was like, I won't even say what I said because it wasn't particularly proper. So it was just, the need, not mead. It wasn't mead. It was need, as in needfulness and heart clenching, but healing to be had. So anyways, my point is that I haven't necessarily found putting cards back and pulling a new card out to be overly helpful because two things happen. One, you just get something similar because the message is the same, or B, you get a nicer card, but the fact of the matter is the energy that you need to work with is still that first one. So so to me it's kind of pointless. Would I be lost if I use the Wildwood Tarot or perhaps Rackham for this year's Into the Woods? No, nobody uses other than the first year. Nobody uses just the Wildwood Tarot. Into the Wild Woods is just about going into the woods where the folk tales and stories and tapping into the energy of the wild witch. You can use whatever deck that you would like to use. There's no need to use a specific deck. I'll be probably mostly using the Forest of Enchantment Tarot. Okay, so I answered that. I think we've hit on everything. So I'm gonna wrap this up because I know I've proven 4 or 5 years in a row that I can talk for 12 hours, but I'm definitely pushing my talk ability. So I'm going to go and have some lunch, or technically I'm going to have some supper. And I hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of your day. And am I Scandinavian or am I Celtic? Well, I see, he knows how already. You've not even been here long, and you know how to you know how to get me sidetracked. I actually have my genetic, and they changed it recently. So here, I'll tell you my percentages because it was so interesting to see the shifts. I know, I said goodbye. If people can leave, before I did my genetic history, I would have assumed Predominantly, so I have grandparents that are full German. My grandfather's full German. My grandmother is full Swedish. Another grandfather is mostly Irish, although our Irish heritage, I know my family lines fairly well. And so even the Irish side, they came from the Norse side. So anyways, my current thing is that I am 44% England, Wales, Northwestern Europe. I am 24% Swedish, 16% Norwegian, 8% Germanic Europe, and 8% Irish/Scottish. So if you pull together the Swedish, Norwegian, and Germanic Europe, it's a pretty good chunk of who I am. So I think it actually beats out the other. I think it's 48%. I'm not very good with math on the fly. 48%, what I would consider that area of Norway and Sweden and Germanic areas. So yes, you could be. Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure, Miss Nikki. It's funny. Yeah, full German is it's been hilarious. I know we're sidetracking it for a minute here. It's hilarious because a lot of people will say, and they get so confused when they get their genetics, and that's the Germans have been the most fun because they think, okay, I'm full German. I was born in Germany and I was raised in Germany. I'm full German. That area, all of Europe, right? Things have shifted, lines have shifted, people have shifted. We've talked about this quite a few times, but heritage, especially genetic heritage, is so interesting because there's no such thing as, I don't think there's any such thing as full anything, because everybody's is shifting and changing, and those lines and those genetic lines especially are, we're raiding over here and pulling over there. There's a famine over here, so everybody goes over there. There's, fantastic something over here, so everybody rushes over there. There's a penal colony made over here, so we dump a bunch of people over there. There's so many there's so many shifts that are occurring. But certainly, I do think that certainly in America, where everybody's an immigrant, if you're not indigenous, right? If you're not Native American, you are an immigrant here. I think because it's a very young country in terms of as it's made up now, that we all did come from somewhere else if you're not Native American. And so we do have a particular focus on heritage. Where did your family come from? What are you? Is a question that Americans ask each other a lot. Even though, of course, the answer is I'm an American, and I have a strong connection to the land that I stand on. But then we also came from somewhere else, and so that focus on heritage is pretty strong here. But the fact of the matter is, as you said, I'm sorry, rabbit trailed again, but as you said, even if you go into cultures that are X, Y, Z, I'm Polish because I live in Poland. Yes, but genetically, you're probably a mix of a lot of different things because people move around. Things happen. People shift and move. And so we have a little bit of everything. But I was excited because I didn't expect to find that much. I expected the German to be much higher, which tells me obviously and clearly, because my mother is 50% German, as in her father was born in Germany. And so I had expected that the German side would be far stronger. But obviously the German side is more of a mix than they knew that they were, just because from wherever they came from in Germany. The Swedish surprised me at how strong it was, although we do have, I know my lineage back in the Swedish side pretty far back. I also do in the German side, though not as far as the Swedish. but that must, that one held a little bit more true. And then some of the Norwegian could actually be from the Swedish or the Irish line, because I know that my Irish line actually crossed, word of come across Vikings and stayed in Ireland, and that's the line that I came from. So even though, so that Norwegian could have necessarily came even from the Irish side. It's so interesting. It's really been an interesting, thing, a journey, because it does make you realize that you have several stories, right? You have the traveling heritage of your family. My grandfather came from Germany. My grandmother came from Sweden. My grandfather over here came from Ireland. Like, I know all of these stories. I know the little bit of Native American. I know that story that's there. But then you have your genetic heritage, which can be different than your family story. And then you have your story of your own self and your own land and where you're on and all that kind of stuff. So it's quite interesting to understand that your genetic heritage isn't necessarily identical to your family heritage, because you don't get all the genetics from your family. Anyways, ramble. Americans confuse the Netherlands with Denmark. I would agree, Soren. I think that I probably would also have to stop and think about that as well. So I would probably be, until I met other people where I paid more attention, I probably would have been confused by that as well. If they were Viking in Ireland, do you have pre-Norman titles of nobility? I'll have to look. We have our Irish side back pretty far. So I'll have to look and see there. I know that one of the things that are said about our family line is that they became more Irish than the Irish. They fell in love with Ireland and became more Irish than the Irish, and fell in love with their little spot there. We have our coat of arms and stuff. It has monkeys on it. Pronunciation with an O. Pronunciation is interesting. And that's one of the things that I'm sorry, I know we're skipping, and I know I said I was going to go. But pronunciation, especially in Old Norse, is problematic. A lot of the things that and even I think Jackson Crawford does a good job talking about this if you watch his channel, because some of the stuff that you're trying to find pronunciations for, obviously the pronunciations change. I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about here. Some of the pronunciation changes across time. Also, a lot of the things that they're trying to do pronunciations for are Proto-Germanic, so it's before it's split off into the different cultures. So they're having. Well, be careful what you Google. Be careful what you Google. Oh, you lost us. We're on our way out. Try something vegetarian. So sorry that you're kind of coming at the tail. We have long moved past that to we stopped talking about that a while back, and I'm actually getting ready to say goodbye. Somebody just trapped me into talking more because I get excited about talking about genetic heritage and things. So we'll have to take it up at another time. But yes, it's good to see you, and good to have you, and anybody else who's popped on randomly and are new. I am tired, Chris. I am very tired. I am done talking, but I get too excited about that stuff. Okay. Now I am going to leave, and I'm not even going to look at the chat screen so that people can't throw out the breadcrumb for me to go squirrel to and run in that direction. I do agree that everything is energy and everything is possible. I do agree with you there. Okay, goodbye. I'm not looking at any of your statements over here. I'm hitting the end stream, and you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Uh, I know I